Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. 2 days after the deadliest mass shooting in more than a century, horror is being joined by confusion. Stephen Paddock shot hundreds of people from his hotel room in Las Vegas in what was one of the most thoroughly planned rampages we've ever seen. 59 murdered, more than 500 injured. And yet 2 days later, we know a lot about how he committed this atrocity. We still know virtually nothing about why. Paddock left no manifesto, no suicide note that we've seen. His family and friends say he never seemed particularly interested in religion or politics, or even, despite the arsenal he amassed, in firearms. Two statements from the Islamic State's press office claim Paddock recently converted to Islam and decided to become a jihadi. So far, there is no evidence that's actually true, though authorities aren't entirely dismissing the idea. Anything is possible at this point. 64-year-old retired accountants don't typically become mass murderers, and when one does, it's worth finding out why. And so that's how we're beginning this hour tonight, with a review of what we know and a look at where this investigation may be headed. For the very latest on all of it, we go to Trace Gallagher, who is standing by in Las Vegas. Trace?
Tucker, we can certainly tell you the investigators are doubling back on the girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, saying that she is now definitely a person of interest in this investigation. And they are saying she is in the Philippines, but they are actively working to bring her back from the Philippines so they can question her. I mean, keep in mind, this is a woman who lived with the shooter in their house, where they found dozens of weapons along with explosives and a plethora, as the police say, of ammunition. It comes at the same time that we believe that now the shooter sent tens of thousands of dollars also to the Philippines. The authorities assume it was for the girlfriend, but again, that has not been confirmed. The sheriff was not happy at all about the pictures being released of the guns inside the Mandalay Bay hotel room. The pictures showed a few of the 23 weapons inside. The sheriff hopes that does not compromise the investigation, though he did acknowledge that at least one of the guns, and we've heard it's more than one of the guns, was modified with something called a bump stock. That's something that replaces the shoulder rest that makes the trigger go automatically, so the gun can fire anywhere between 400 and 800 rounds per minute. We also learned there were cameras both inside the room mounted and outside. In fact, one of the cameras outside was mounted on a service cart, and the police believe it was mounted there so that the shooter could tell when police were coming down the hallway toward the room. We do not yet know exactly what the cameras inside the room captured or documented. They did find more weapons in the shooter's home up in Reno, Nevada. That adds to the weapons they found at the home in Mesquite, Nevada, and the dozens of weapons that he had in the hotel room. They have also taken electronics out of the hotel, out of the house in Reno, out of the house in Mesquite, and they're now in the process of scouring the electronics as well as the hard drives of the computers. They are now saying that for the first time in the past 3 days, there's still no motive, but they are very confident that they will soon have a motive. And finally, Tucker, we are checking out these reports that in the weeks ahead of a separate concert that was in downtown Las Vegas, that the shooter actually rented condominiums that were above that venue. The question now becomes, was this the original target, or was it planned for somewhere else? And was it planned to be more elaborate initially than this came out on Sunday night? Tucker.
Already pretty elaborate. Trace Gallagher, thanks a lot for that update.
Right.
Amr Badani writes at USA Today. He's been taking a close look at Stephen Paddock's personal history, and he joins us tonight to tell us what he's found. Amr, thanks a lot for coming on. Sure. Trying to get to the question of motive, have you seen any indication that Paddock had an interest in politics or religion, ideology of any kind?
It's, I think as your colleague put it really well, we have this patchwork of this portrait of this guy, but there isn't any sort of satisfying or definitive answer at this point. Yeah. And in a lot of these incidents, you know, we've gone through a lot of these over the years in the U.S., and 48 hours in, you know, usually we not only know a motive, but we start developing sort of this narrative of how this person got from point A to point B of doing this terrible thing. And we don't have that. We just have these little bits and pieces of information. The money sent to the Philippines, the guns, which are quite a bit, but not. People own guns in the United States. It's not unusual for someone to own that many weapons. He liked to play poker, and he had some transfers that were unusually high that automated triggered a currency transfer, a CTR is what the Treasury Department calls them. Not unusual, though, if he's, a high-stakes poker player. Nothing that his brother, who's spoken over and over again about this, they had a somewhat distant relationship, but siblings have distant relationships. But he also seemed like just a normal guy.
Well, that's what everybody says. Go back, though, to the wire transfer of $100,000 to the Philippines. Do we know to whom it was sent or why or anything about it?
No. We know it. We know it's to an account in the Philippines, and we also know that his girlfriend, who's been the authorities have been calling a person of interest, happens to be in the Philippines at this moment.
Do we know where in the Philippines? Is it because the different regions are very different? Okay.
Yeah,
interesting. Now, investigators have said that they've spoken to the girlfriend, and as of earlier today, we're waiting for her to come back. Does it seem unusual? There are, of course, federal agents in Manila, there always are, that she hasn't been interviewed in person there?
Well, I don't know if that's clear if she hasn't been interviewed in person. And I think, I think it's also interesting, could mean many things when they, when feds like to use, or law enforcement in general like to use the term person of interest. But, they are saying two things. One, that she's talking, but we want to know more from her. And this $100,000 that was transferred is intriguing.
So last question. You've been a reporter for a while. Have you ever covered anybody who had no digital footprint of any kind, as this guy apparently did? None.
It's hard to find any American individual at this point that doesn't have a digital footprint.
Yes, which itself suggests that maybe there's something out there. I don't know. Thank you for that. Thank you for the latest. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The FBI is obviously focused on the motive for this attack. Not much has leaked out to the rest of us. Fox's Catherine Herridge has been on it all day, and she joins us now in the studio. What are you hearing, Catherine?
Well, two of our contacts, Tucker, have seen the inventory of the weapons that were recovered, and they're telling us that everything he had between the hotel and the residences was real high-end. They told us that there were AR-15s, AR-10s, with a costing between $1,500 and $3,000. And when you add the scopes and the tripods, you're looking at an investment, of over 100,000 case. So this guy made a significant financial investment, much more of an investment that was really necessary to carry out. It's almost an exaggeration or a caricature of what would have been required.
Because that's a number of times what a conventional AR-15 costs. They're very cheap right now. So is there any inkling of why he would have wanted high-end weapons?
There's no inkling about the why, but we're getting a better sense of the timetable for the purchases. Some of these weapons were purchased back in June. So if you take that as a data point, it suggests there was some level of premeditation as far back as the summer, if not before. And the Sheriff Lombardo said at the news conference today that based on the arsenal that he had, it took significant premeditation. But you're right to note the fact that it's almost overcompensating, if you will, right? Because there was no way he could have used all these weapons or the ammunition that he had in the hotel, and then to make such a significant investment also in the planning.
From different manufacturers, apparently there were 9 separate manufacturers, which itself is very odd. Finally, ISIS, as you reported yesterday, has taken credit for this guy in 2 different press releases. It was dismissed sort of by federal authorities, but they seem to leave a little bit of wiggle room there. Do we know anything?
I mean, there's a little bit of daylight there. What jumps out to one of my contacts who does a lot of collection of social media from ISIS and Al-Qaeda for the government is that it's unusual for them to really double down on a claim.
For ISIS to double down.
Yeah, they've made bogus claims in the past. You remember back in June, there was the attack on the casino in the Philippines, and they claimed that, but in fact it was just a bunch of criminals who were responsible for that. But it's unusual to see that kind of doubling down, and then no obvious proof of contact or evidence or a photo that would allow them to say, see, this is our guy, or this is us Skyping with our guy. So everything about the case, as you just said with your last guess, it's really squirrely, to use a technical term, right?
I don't believe it for a second. A 64-year-old man, there's no evidence of digital communications for him. I just don't believe that. Catherine Herridge, thank you for the latest. Dozens of guns, cash sent abroad, no manifesto. How do all the facts fit together, and what should investigators be looking for? Terry Turchi is a former FBI Deputy Assistant Director. He helped lead the hunt for the Unabomber. out in Montana, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Churchy, thanks a lot for coming on. So,
you bet, Tucker.
What piece of the string would you be pulling if you were running this investigation right now?
I would definitely be interested in knowing what the girlfriend is saying. I'd want to get her back here as soon as possible. I think that's very important because she's the one who's going to know what he was doing in June and July and how he's been evolving over the last year or however long she's known him. So that's very important. Also, in this case, it's even more important because, quite honestly, nothing is making sense based on what we know about prior cases and prior subjects like this. It's very important that the authorities in Las Vegas do exactly what they seem to be doing, which is following the trail, staying on the trail of the forensics, the crime scenes, the actual operational part of the investigation, the variety of special projects, doing all the things that you might say are kind of routine, but they're really not, finding out where every camera is located, getting all the film, trying to find people and witnesses both inside and outside the perimeter of the crime scene. All those things are the things that are factual. The information you get is fact, and eventually all of those things and all of those facts end at an intersection where you answer the question that everybody's asking, what was the motive? But if you don't stay on that trail and you start getting into all kinds of theories, because we could sit here now and talk for an hour and we could probably come up with 100 theories. Right. Every one of those, if investigators started worrying about them or getting sidetracked, they would end up somewhere in a swamp. So they have to be really focused on that trail that I always like to call it.
Well, here's an actual fact. I mean, obviously, nobody is farther from the profile in your mind's eye of an Islamic State operative than Stephen Paddock. He just doesn't look like the guy. But the fact is, their press office twice laid claim to him. So what do you make of that? Do you dismiss that out of hand? Should it be dismissed out of hand? Should it be followed up on? What are federal investigators doing with that?
Well, Tucker, I've learned never to dismiss anything out of hand, and so are the people that are working this. And so the way you handle something like that is, again, you seek facts. You go to an entire national security apparatus of people who know ISIS, of people who are following that aspect of things every day to keep us safe. And you talk to them about what's going on. You have them on the task force that's working on this. And every day is different. So they're going to come in every day with updates and information and help you try and figure out and kind of navigate your way through this. In addition to that, all of these search warrants that are being served, and this man had multiple pieces of property, he had cars, he had all kinds of things. They're going to look for something, and again, he's not the normal guy so far, but if he is kind of the normal guy, guess what we're going to find? The normal shooter, the normal terrorist type loner, what we're going to find are journals. We're going to find something where, at least for himself, he was keeping notes and he was kind of telling everybody in the world what was going to happen. And so you're always on the lookout for that kind of thing. Hopefully we'll find those kinds of things and it'll shed some light on where we are and how we got here.
That's right. If he recorded his murders, you can't convince me he didn't leave previous records of what he was thinking. That's really smart. Terry Churchy, thank you.
Very good point. You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Well, the left wasted no time in leveraging the shooting on Sunday to call for new and expansive gun control laws. But do these advocates know what they're asking for? I'll talk to one of them in just a minute. Plus, Stephen Paddock took a long time to prepare. What security measures, if any, could have stopped the attack? You keep hearing people saying, we should have done this, we should have done that. Would any of it have helped? We'll talk to someone who does that for a living just ahead.
I can only say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we live in a world where there are people who will put a gun before your lives.
You want to make America great again? Pass any kind of common sense gun control legislation.
The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, a number of other lawmakers who won't do anything about this because the NRA has their in a money clip, also sent their thoughts and their prayers today, which is good. They should be praying. They should be praying for God to forgive them for letting the gun lobby run this country.
So there you go. Everyone's sad about what happened, of course, but today you saw a parade of figures in politics and entertainment, the media, come out and say we need to do something. Strikingly absent from these pleas was any specific suggestion about what to do. What gun law should we be passing, and how would it have prevented what we saw yesterday? We haven't found the answer to that. We're going to keep pressing. Well, we've also heard person after person second-guessed the security around the event on Sunday night in Las Vegas. And you have heard people say that we need to do this or to do that, become much more like this country or that country, become more like Israel. It all sounds well-meaning. The question is, would it work? We decided to find someone who might know the answer to that, and we found Kelly McCann. He's a former Marine Special Missions Officer, now CEO of Combatives Brand Security Consultants and Training, and he joins us tonight. Kelly, you do this for a living. You were the first person I thought of when I watched others on television say, if we'd only run the bags through a screen or put the customers through a magnetometer. Is that a fair assessment of the security on Sunday night in Vegas?
No, it's a reaction, a pretty predictable reaction, right? I mean, there's always this urge to answer the void, right? To answer the question. The problem is outlier incidents are really hard to plan for.
Yes.
Ask yourself, like if you were traveling with your family, you had a lot of bags, you had a miserable flight, it took a long time to get somewhere, maybe in the 90 days or 120 days after an incident like this, you might put up with waiting in line for 30 minutes, waiting for your bag to get to the desk. But after that, would that be acceptable to you? And what's the cost, not only to the hotel chain, but to everything? I mean, you've got to staff that. You've got to have people who know what they're looking at, right? So you've got to have people like trained for TSA to be able to look into a bag through an X-ray machine. So in a lot of cases, a lot of the ideas are because people want to answer that void, but it's not practical and it's not sustainable.
It seems to me that if you have someone like Stephen Paddock, who is unconcerned about his own life, or all kinds of suicide attacks you see around the world, you have someone who doesn't care about being caught or dying, how do you protect against that?
It's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, if you don't care if you're going to get caught or killed, and your target are unsuspecting people, right, at an event where security is marginal, you know, or reasonable, it's exceptionally difficult. This is a byproduct of who we are and how we choose to live, right? We live in a free society. If we started suddenly having very draconian measures, okay, I mean like super draconian measures, if we, you know, had an internal police force like the Stasi in East Germany, you could certainly stem some of these incidents from happening, but you could not guarantee that they won't happen. You can live a fit life and do PT and eat well and all that and still get cancer. I mean, it's a sad truth, but that's just the way it is.
So to the specifics of Sunday night, one thing that jumped out on me was the response time from police, and I hate to ever second-guess law enforcement because I respect and support them,
of course,
obviously. But 72 or 74 minutes is a long time. You're one of the few people I know who's actually heard a NATO round discharged indoors. Describe how loud that is. This guy fired thousands of them from within his hotel room.
Yeah, there's an overpressure factor, right? I mean, it's actually creates overpressure, so I mean, it's exceptionally loud. The problem is...
So it would have been, I mean, it would have been clear to the people in the hallway that there was gunfire coming from this room, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Now ask yourself, for the average person who's on vacation in Las Vegas, what are you going to do about it? How are you physically going to intervene with someone who obviously is firing rifles, you know, out of a window? You know, this is where people, yes, people get paid to intervene in these incidents. They don't get paid to run foolishly into them and get killed themselves, right? So there's a lot of things that most people don't consider in these things. Just the sheer area, the 32nd floor. So you've got to be able to clear your way to there, because at that point it's not clear, is he acting alone? Is there someone else that could be intervening, the security forces on the way up? There's a lot of elements that prevent that immediate response people would like to think can occur.
So really quickly, I think and this is not an attack on anyone, everyone seems to have done his or her best.
Of course.
But the government didn't actually protect the people at that concert on Sunday night, and maybe it couldn't have. So that kind of suggests that people should be thinking about protecting themselves. How do you protect yourself against something like this? Is it even possible?
Well, I mean, it's possible to prepare for them, right? I mean, the idea of a concealed weapon, you know, came up not at the 32nd floor, but you should know how to do basic combat first aid. You should know how to do direct pressure. You should know how to put a tourniquet on. You should know not to second guess yourself if you hear gunfire in a place that's public. I mean, this is happening all over the place now. So, I mean, you shouldn't second guess yourself, and you should be able to breathe, look, make your own mind up about where safety is, and run to that area. Understand the difference between cover and concealment.
It's not fireworks. It's never fireworks.
It's never fireworks.
Kelly McCann, thank you. Voice of Sanity, as always. Great to see you. A lot of people are calling for new gun control measures after the attack, but what exactly do they mean by that? Just do something. What do they want done? We'll talk to one of those people next. Well, an awful lot of people in the last 24 hours, politicians, late-night talk show hosts, media folks, have responded to the Las Vegas shooting by demanding new gun control measures, or at least attacking those who aren't demanding new gun control measures. They speak confidently, though we'd guess that few, if any of them, have ever handled or even looked at the guns they want banned, but whatever. That's become the rule in 21st century America. The less you know about firearms, the more confident you feel in advocating far-reaching national laws about them. Colby Hall writes at Mediaite, he just wrote a piece saying the scariest part of the Las Vegas attack, scarier than the people who were killed, is, quote, the pro-gun message that nothing can be done in response to those murders. Colby Hall joins us tonight. Hey, Colby, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So you wrote a column that was very outraged. You dipped deep into the adjective bin. You said, and I'm quoting now, it's cowardly, embarrassing, shallow, craven, irresponsible for TV figures not to offer specific solutions to gun violence.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Well, no, you said to the pundits who say there's nothing that can be done.
Those were what I wrote. That's exactly right.
You said to the let me quote you now. To the pundits who say there's nothing that can be done, let's at least try. Anything else is cowardly and embarrassing, and to suggest such is shallow, craven, and irresponsible use of your broadcast power. That's what you said.
If you're criticizing me for saying that we should try to keep the frequency of violent mass shootings happening, then I'm guilty as charged.
It's absurd. No, I'm not saying that at all.
Well, no, but the point of my piece was a critique, a fair critique, on pro-gun thought leaders who are saying that this was the price of freedom, or there are some things that the government shouldn't be able to stop or can't stop, or there's nothing that could have been done that would have stopped this. That all may be true, and that may all be sort of to the letter true, but the spirit of that idea is, I mean, it's defeatist, it's nihilist, and yes, it's cowardly and irresponsible.
I'm not sure I understand. So, I mean, I understand the point of the piece, which is to put your virtue on display and say, I care, I'm a good person, I live in Brooklyn.
That was not, well, thank you for telling me what I meant.
Okay. But it suggests that you have an answer that lesser mortals are ignoring. And so let me ask you point blank, what is the solution to what you call gun violence, to shootings like yesterday? What laws should Congress be taking up, should pundits be advocating for, that would have prevented that?
Well, in the toss to the segment, you sort of mocked this piece, this idea, by saying that we should do something. Of course we should do something. To suggest that we should do nothing in the face of this, is absurd.
I'm not suggesting that, and I never would suggest it. I don't feel that way, and I'm not advocating for it. I'm simply asking you, and you made this clear in your piece, you're a very good person who cares.
Thank you.
I'm wondering specifically what we should be doing. What should we do legislatively to prevent this from happening again?
I'm not an expert on guns. I'm a gun owner. I grew up in a small town in Kansas. I own a shotgun and a rifle that have been in my family for a long time. I used to go hunting. I'm not for banning guns.
No. I'm asking what you're for. I'm not asking what you're not for. I'm asking you, what are you for? All these people are allowed. We got to do something. Okay, what? That's a simple question. What?
The reason this was the most violent mass shooting in American history is that this assailant purchased these adaptations legally, that he illegally modified his semi-automatic weapons to shoot 400 rounds a minute. That should be illegal. We should make it illegal that you can modify. It already is illegal, but we should create more friction so that more people can't shoot 400 rounds a second. I also think there should be better background checks. Any friction. Look, I'm not saying that there's going to be.
Wait, hold on. No, let's take these one at a time. I want to take you seriously. As hard as your piece makes that for me, I want to take it seriously. So you're saying that the bump stock, which he apparently attached to one of these rifles, should be, or a few of them should be banned. Do you know anything? Do you know that in 2010 the Obama ATF released a letter saying, these are the facts, right? Okay, that was legal. Now, I don't have a problem with banning that. I wouldn't put one on my rifles, that's for sure. I think it's silly. But are you suggesting that if he hadn't had this, he wouldn't have killed dozens of people? I mean,
no,
honestly.
I'm not suggesting that. In fact, I think it's sort of craven for you to play politics by mentioning the Obama administration. Well, why do you bring up the Obama administration?
I'm giving you facts, actually. There's nothing craven about it.
Why are you playing politics so shortly after this?
I'm not playing politics in the slightest.
That's exactly what you're doing.
I'm merely saying, hold on, slow down. Your piece suggests that there's a NRA-funded campaign to keep America from getting the solutions it deserves that would save lives. And I'm merely pointing out the truth, which is this thing is legal. I would not have a problem with making it illegal.
Great.
I'm sure it will become illegal. But
Well,
does
then we
that
can agree on
solve the
that.
But it's irrelevant, and you know it.
How is that irrelevant? If it lessens the frequency of these sorts of shootings moving forward, isn't that everyone can support regardless?
How many shootings have taken place with a bump stock in them? Mass shootings.
Well, one that we know of, and that happened Sunday night.
Okay,
so
great.
are you arguing that you?
Then that's great.
Then
What I'm
what
arguing is that that's fine. Ban it. But that would not have saved a massive number of lives because it's still possible to pull the trigger awfully quickly on a semi-automatic rifle.
I didn't say that it would. I didn't say that it would have.
So
Look,
I'm looking for a real.
It's not a perfect world. I'm not saying that by banning these things will make it all go away.
So what
but if we can lessen the frequency, isn't that something that we should all be? What would you do? What is your argument?
It happened one time. I'm asking you for the magic solution that the rest of us who were let's slow down. Okay, so what would have prevented those?
Less frequency. What do we know? It could have. All these laws may have prevented things that we don't know that happened. Maybe better background checks. Maybe a lack of selling.
What does a better background check mean?
Weapons.
Well, no. What does a better background check mean?
Well,
this guy had background checks for every purchase.
Where it takes longer time. If you are of sound mind, then you can wait 2 weeks, not 7 days.
He started buying these rifles in June.
Well, I never suggested that these rules would have made this.
Look, I just want one solution. Look, I just want you wrote a piece attacking people because they weren't offering solutions, and now I'm giving you an opportunity to offer a solution, and you don't have one.
Well, I'm having problems with my earpiece right now, but now that I've got that figured out, I'll tell you that get rid of bump stocks, or make sure that bump stocks are illegal.
Great, fine.
Let's lose the loopholes in the secondary gun market, and let's have more stringent background checks.
But this guy did not go to the secondary gun market that we know of, and he went through background.
You're changing the conversation to this guy to what I would do moving forward.
No, but okay, so name a mass shooting that would have been stopped by these new background checks you're talking about.
I can't name things that didn't happen. There's theoretically lots of shootings that probably didn't happen because of effective gun control. You can't prove a negative, but think if there weren't background checks
I'm totally confused.
Then there would have likely been more mass shootings. That's just common sense. It's absurd to suggest otherwise.
Okay. Look, there have been a number of mass shootings. They're terrible. People died. They're corrosive of American society. I'm as against them as anybody is. I'm horrified by them. Right. You're saying there are legislative solutions out there that will prevent future shootings.
Actually,
and
my
I just want you
to
name
one. About,
I'm trying to have a conversation, but I'm not shrugging my shoulders. I invited you on.
Well,
and I'm finding you totally ignorant of the subject.
The examples in my piece were pro-gun people that shrugged their shoulders and had a defeatist attitude, and that to me is extremely nihilistic and is a dystopian future that I don't want to be part of.
You know what I find nihilistic is when someone jumps up and down about how we can make America better, and then when asked how to do that has no answers at all.
Well, that's
and that
not
would
me
describe
because I just told you what I would do.
That we should have some kind of background check you can't describe.
I'm sorry you're mad.
Well, I'm not mad. I'm sincere because I've been getting lectures all day from people.
Oh, if only. Did that not suffice to you? Did you not listen?
We'll repeat it because I'm not sure I get it. So we would have background checks that delayed gun purchases for some longer period of time.
A deeper background check. Get rid of loopholes of secondary gun markets and get rid of bump stocks.
A deeper background check that would look at what? What does that mean?
Psychological profiles, digital footprints.
That you would have a team of psychiatrists assess. No, you brought it up. They would assess the person's mental state.
You asked me what I would do, and I told you what I would do. Yes,
well,
absolutely.
I'm asking you to describe it.
To me, it's not about. See, Tucker, you're playing politics with an issue.
I'm not playing politics.
My position is that we should be working.
I'm asking you about policy, and you haven't thought about it at all.
I just told you 3 things. Dude,
you said deeper back. I'm listening very carefully, as I always do.
So let me ask you this: why did we outlaw automatic weapons in 1986?
I'm sorry, why did we
outlaw automatic weapons in 1986?
Well, because the Congress felt that people shouldn't have them. I don't know.
So why doesn't the Congress think that we should still have semi-automatic weapons that could very easily, for $50, be converted into effectively automatic weapons and to kill more people?
How many semi-automatic rifles do you think?
That's a very specific thing.
Okay,
why can't we do that?
You outlaw bump stocks. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be outlawed next week.
Right.
Okay.
If we get rid of bump stocks and we sell less semi-automatic weapons, then that's a start.
Really? So last question, how many semi-automatic weapons are out there, would you say, right now in America?
Too many.
But just rough guess, how many would you say?
I'm going to guess too many.
I'm going to guess you literally have no idea what you're talking about. And you should write about things that you understand.
Okay, so
things that you understand.
Okay, so how many
and not patronize the rest of us with your foolish blather.
Tucker? How many
tens of, probably
oh,
over
so you don't
60.
know either. You don't know
About 60 million, actually. Okay. And there are about 200 million high-capacity tactical magazines.
And that's cool.
I'm not saying it's cool or not cool. I'm just saying you have to deal with those facts moving forward. You can't pretend it's not true.
Let's just put the debate aside and say,
right,
let's try to have less people die.
Yeah, okay. Right. Well, just don't know much about Stephen Paddock. We do know that he was a white male, and that's enough for one columnist who says he ought to be profiled on that basis, as all white men should be. Stay tuned for that conversation. Well, we still aren't quite sure, actually have no idea, what motivated Stephen Paddock to murder so many people. Nevertheless, syndicated columnist Ruben Navarrete says he knows what America should do in response to those killings. Start profiling white men, all of them. Quote, there's plenty of evidence that law enforcement officers profile African Americans, Latinos, and Muslim Americans, Navarrete wrote in a recent piece. How did white men get to be so special in an era when so many mass shootings are linked to gunmen who fit that profile? It is still. Ruben Navarrete joins us right now. Ruben, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tucker, longtime friend, first-time guest.
So you're for profiling now. What changed your mind? I thought you were against racial profile. I thought it was racist, but now it's not?
Well, there's two sides to that coin, right? The same folks who think it's okay to profile African-American motorists on a freeway or Muslim Americans at an airport or Mexicans on the border, they say, well, look at the numbers. Likewise, when you're talking about serial killers and mass murders, it's inescapable that most of those folks are white males. It just makes sense to keep it all even.
Okay, so you're just for the record, you're for racial profiling now. So the next time some big city police department says we're profiling people outside a mosque, you're going to say, yeah, good job.
You got to finish the quote in the column you read, the column that I just wrote this afternoon, talks about not all white males. You said I want to profile all white males. No. I want to profile white males who buy an unusually large number of high-impact, powerful weapons and ammunition. If you do that, you add that behavior to that characteristic. Yeah, I think those are good people to keep an eye on, keep a list of, and keep track of.
So do you think there's something about, I mean, I guess what I found so striking about your column was the racial angle. I don't think most people looked, I don't look at most shootings through the lens of race, and I didn't look at this one. I thought it was striking that he was old. I thought it was striking he was a former IRS guy. I thought a lot of things were interesting, but his race didn't jump out at me, but obviously it was a real concern for you. Why was this a racial killing? Yeah. Yeah.
It was for me and a lot of other Latino African-American friends I talked to. They likewise sort of hold their breath whenever they hear about an incident like this, and they say, oh, geez, I hope this wasn't one of ours. I actually heard somebody who was a Christian fundamentalist say that he does the same thing. He always hopes that it's not one of his constituency, his community. So in terms of Latinos and African Americans, they are increasingly afraid of white men with 42 guns in their arsenal, who walk around with a grievance oftentimes as if somehow the world has done them wrong and they would have gotten into a better college if a minority hadn't taken their spot and all the like. So
I wonder if you think, by the way,
folks there, working class folks who talk about trade deals, who put them out of work. There's one grievance after another with this bunch.
Yeah, this bunch. I wonder if, but we've got a driver's license photograph, by the way, of the shooter on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but our viewers may be wondering what that is. I wonder if when you go home and replay this tape and you hear yourself making generalizations about an entire racial group, if you'll think, wow, I've become a racist. I wonder if you'll come to that realization.
I've been called every name in the book, Tucker, by the right, left,
that's a sincere question, though. Don't blow it off. You just said about an entire racial group, they do this, they're this way, they have these attitudes. And that's, of course, the textbook definition of racism. So I wonder, Tucker, if you know that. Yeah.
Here's the thing, and don't be condescending to me because it reminds me of white liberals. You and I both find white liberals to be really annoying. Okay, so don't say, I wonder if you know that. I've been called a racist just last week when I took a stand against African-American athletes kneeling during the national anthem.
Don't dodge the question and get into this. I'm offending both sides. No. I'm being very specific. I'm saying when you, like 30 seconds ago, not last week, said of an entire group of people who share only skin color, that's all they have in common.
And behavior, the fact that they stockpile weapons and ammunition.
That white people do. So you're comfortable with making derogatory statements about a whole group of people based on their race? Because I am not comfortable doing
Tucker,
that.
That's fine. Well, let me think about that again, Tucker. I watch your show, and you often do that on this show, in fact. if that
give me one
group of people
example.
happen to be Latinos or
Give me one
immigrants.
example where I've made any generalization about a group on the basis of their race. One time.
I think I'll give you one example. In the future, and you did this just last week, when you talk about immigration, you should not rely on people from FAIR or CIS, the Center for Immigration Studies, groups that 20 years ago, Tucker, when I first met you,
I said, give me an example.
You would criticize when you wrote for the Weekly Standard.
Stop. Give me an example of me deriding an entire group of people on the basis of their race, and you can't because I don't believe in that, and I never have. And you just did, and I'm wondering when that became okay. When did that become okay to do that in public?
Let's be clear about this. Let's be clear about this for the third and fourth time. It's not just the racial characteristic. It says in the column, if you're a white male who stockpiles ammunition and high-powered weapons, the government should keep track of you.
You just said white men have these attitudes and they run around and they're mad because their kids didn't get into college.
Yes.
It's like, it's not okay to make generalizations based on race.
It has something to do with the shows they watch at night. And the sense this grievance mentality is fostered in them over and over again.
That you can say something that's the textbook definition of racism and then accuse me of it for calling you out.
So, Tucker, I think the difference is here's the thing. It doesn't really bother me if somebody calls me a racist. They do it on the right, left, and center all the time. No, but I only care that I make them think.
No, but I'm hoping to make you think about what you just said. I'm not saying that you are a racist. I'm saying what you just said
how do you get by
is
if the FBI is saying, Tucker, if the FBI is saying that the vast majority of serial killers and mass murderers are white males, how do you get away with not profiling them? How did they become so special that somehow the rules that apply to other people being profiled doesn't apply to them?
Your words are dripping with hostility. You make me nervous because I know that you're basically a reasonable guy, but you're dripping with race hatred all of a sudden, and it makes me worry about where this country is going. It really does. I mean that. Ruben, thanks for coming on tonight. Up next, Britt Hume will join us with his take on the Vegas attack and how the political and media establishments reacted to it. Stay tuned.